Begin today at the Mishnah on the top of Daf Memalef Amud Aleph. Zok the Heilige Mishnah ha'oime petisias biti shoploini. A person comes and admits that I went and seduced this girl into a relationship. So Mishalem Boishus Pagam. He pays the Boishus and Pagam, the humiliation and the Pagam that her value went down, al piyatzmai, with his own admission. But ve'ei Mishalem Knas. The Knas, the 50 coins that you have to pay, that he does not have to pay with his own admission. So this Mishnah now will continue and give different examples for this point. Anytime you admit for a payment of Knas, you're not going to be obligated to pay. And Rashi here brings the Gemara in Baba Kama that learns this out from a pasuk. It says, Asher Yarshiyun Alekim. When it comes to a Knas, only if the Bezdin is the one that's obligating you to pay through their evidence. But Prat L'Mashias Atzmai. That excludes a person that comes forward with his own admission. You don't have to pay a fine. And here, so there's other examples. Let's see. A person that admits that he stole. Mishalem esakeren. Next page. Mem Aleph. Mishalem esakeren. So he pays the principal of what he stole. Al piyatzma, with his own admission. But ve'em mishalem tashlumi keifu v'tashlumi abba v'chamisha. But he does not pay the double that you usually pay by a gneva, or 4 or 5 times as much if you went and slaughtered it or sold it. Third example. Heimis shayri espleni. A person admits that my ox killed this individual, or damaged another person's ox. So you pay with your own admission. But if he says, that my ox killed this person's slave, so over here, as we mentioned already before in the Gemara, the Torah says that you pay a knas, a fine of 30 coins, which is equal for whatever the situation is. So over here, because this is a fine, you don't pay it with your own admission. So Ze'aklal, this is the rule for what we consider to be payment, regular payment, and what's considered to be a payment, which is a fine. If what you're paying is more than what you damaged, so then this is a fine. You're not obligated to pay this with your own admission. Okay, so the Gemara here focuses on a detail of the beginning of the Mishnah. How did the Mishnah begin? The person that comes forward and says that I was mefata, I seduced this girl into a relationship. And then it says he doesn't pay the knas with his own admission, but he does pay the boishes and the pagam. Frek the Gemara, the lisni anasti. Why doesn't the Mishnah say the case of anasti, that a person came and admitted that he forced her into this relationship? Taisa says this would be even a bigger chiddush. It says when a person was a ma'anisr, that's even worse of an act, and he admitted to this, that he still does not pay the knas. And says the Gemara, Loi mibaya ka'amar. When it says the case of Pitisi, that he's admitting to the fact that he convinced her, that's actually a bigger chiddush, that he pays her the baishas and the pagam. Why? Loi mibaya nasti, needless to say, in the case where the person is admitting that he forced her, the loi kapagim lo, that he's not causing any pagam for her. What does this pagam refer to? So Rashi refers to this as a laz. Fact that a person comes and says that he forced this girl to do something against her will, so it doesn't give her a bad name in the city, that look, that she went and she was mizaneh, she had a relationship with someone, it was done by force, it was done against her will, so in such a case, we can understand the mishalem baishus upigam. We accept his admission, and he pays baishus upigam, he pays for humiliating her and bringing down her value, al piyatzme, with his own admission. Aval petisi, but when a person comes and admits and says that I convinced her into this relationship, the kapagim law, by saying this, it's not just admitting that he did something wrong. He's now giving her a bad name. He's basically saying that she came and consented. She played along with me. So over here in such a case, he's giving her a very bad name in her family, in the city, and so on. So maybe I should say, maybe then the Bezdin would not accept what he says. Because you're not only admitting for yourself, but you're giving her a bad name. So we don't accept what he said, and therefore he does not pay. Kamash Malan, that's why that's the chiddush of the Mishnah, that even when he says pitisi, so the Mishnah says, Kamash Malan masnisen, Kamash Malan, that is, the Mishnah is saying that he does pay with his own admission. Pitisi means he convinced her. Says the Gemara masnisen, the loika haitana. So now we can understand that what it says there in our Mishnah does not follow the opinion of this Tana here. The Tanya we learned in the Braisa. Rab Shimon ben Yehuda mishom Rab Shimon. Rab Shimon ben Yehuda says in the name of Rab Shimon, Av baishus pagam, even when he admits and we'd have to pay baishus pagam, he humiliated her and he caused her damage. Ein mishalem al piyatzmai. But if he's admitting that he not to force her, but he convinced her, in such a case, the Beis Din will not accept what he says, and he does not pay it with his own admission. Why? We cannot believe this person's admission to come and say that this person's daughter did something with her consent and he's giving her a bad name. So we don't accept at all his admission. So he doesn't have to pay anything. So that's the machlokes here between the Tana of our Mishnah and Rab Shimon in the Braise in a case where a person says pitisi, that he convinced her. Do we accept this admission or not? And again, the issue here is that you're causing her a bad name. So Rav Papa says to Abaye, now what's if she doesn't care about the fact that she's getting a bad name? She says, I accept his admission, yes, it gives me a bad name, but it doesn't bother me. I want the payment of the 50 coins of the knas that he owes me for this admission. What's going to be the halacha in such a case? So sorry, not the knas. Sorry, not the knas. The boishas and pagam. The knas she doesn't get. The boishas and pagam, she says, I want that payment of boishas and pagam. So it doesn't matter to her that it's giving her a bad name. So what's going to be the halacha? So the Gemara says, if she's ready to accept this bad name, okay, but how about the father? The father is not ready to accept this bad name. So Beis Din cannot accept his admission. But how about how about if the father says, I don't mind the bad name that my daughter has, I want to have this payment of boishas upagam, what's the halacha then? Says the Gemara, maybe the other family members that do not want to have this bad name, that there's this girl in their family that did such a thing. Says the Gemara, how about what's if the whole family comes and says, we don't care, we want this money, this payment of boishas upagam? So in such a case, would Rab Shimon agree that we accept this admission and he'll have to pay? So what's going to be the halacha here? Says the Gemara, even in such a case, we don't accept his admission and he doesn't pay. And the reason is, it's impossible that there isn't some family member, even a distant family member that lives in another country overseas, that's not happy with this admission and it's not happy with the fact that it gives a bad name for someone in their family. Very interesting. So which means, the Mefarshim basically explained that it's a very interesting thing that you have this family member, a distant family member living overseas, and he could prevent her from accepting this payment. She wants the payment. She says, I agree, her father agrees, her family here agrees, but some distant relative overseas is not agreeing. So what? So the Mefarshim explained, the Rishonim I think already explained this, that all this means is that the Beis Din will say, we can't get involved. We're not going to force this man to pay. But if she says, I want the payment, and he's going to pay her, so then we're not going to stop him of paying her. If she's ready to accept the payment, even though it gives her a bad name, so he has to go ahead and pay her. But Beis Din will not force him to pay to cause another family member to have a bad name based on this, because after all, it's only his admission. We don't have any other proof besides his admission. So if his admission is causing a bad name for a family member, so Beis Din's not going to accept that. Or Beis Din's not going to get involved and force him to pay.
This is only a katana.
Again, this is only?
A katana.
Why a katana?
I'm asking.
No, it doesn't say just katana.
Yeah, a knaida. Well, we had a machlokes before, Bachlal, regarding the whole payment of boishas upagam, if it's katana, a naida. But yeah, a naida. Okay, going to the next part of the Mishnah. Here we have a piece of Masechta Baba Kama, almost word for word from a whole sugya in Baba Kama. This is another case where you see that Masechta Kesubos is shas cotton. You have a mamash, a piece of Baba Kama. Let's go. So the Mishnah says, if a person says that he stole, so then what does he pay by his self-admission? Just the principal, but not a fine.
No.
And the same, it said in the Mishnah regarding an ox that gored, so what do you pay? You only pay al pi atz. So the Mishnah said, then you don't pay al pi atzmai, right? Well, again, what does it say in the Mishnah? You pay al pi atzmai, but if you said that your ox gored an eved and killed him, so then you do not pay al pi atzmai because that's a fine. So the Gemara here will bring up a very general machlekes regarding the payment when an ox gores, and then it will eventually come back to our Mishnah to prove regarding this machlekes here. Itmar, so we learned the machlekes. Palga niske, when you pay only half of the nezek, half of the damage. Now this is the halacha of a tam. There's a difference between a tam and a muad. Before an ox gores 3 times, he has a status of a tam, and he only pays half. After he gores 3 times, he's called a muad, and he pays full pay. So the question is, when you pay only half of the payment, what's the status of this payment? Rav Papa says, Palga niske memayna. When you pay only half of the payment, so this is, you're paying for the money for the damage that you paid. Even though you're only paying half, but what you are paying is a money payment for what you damaged. Rav Yeshua says, Palga Niske, this half a payment, Knasa. It's considered to be a fine. Really, you should be paying nothing. Because the ox did not gore yet 3 times, shouldn't be paying anything. When you pay half, that's a penalty, it's a fine. And the Gemara explains the machlekes here. Rav Papa says, when you pay chatzi nezek for a tam, so this is a money payment, kasavar, because his opinion is, stam shvarim. Usually, when you own an ox, what you have to know is, lav b'cheskas shimur kaimi. They are not in a status where you could rely on them being guarded on their own, that they're not going to damage anybody. You have to be very aware that this ox has a nature that it could damage. And therefore, you should have guarded it better. So really, you should be paying for the full damage that happened here, because it was your responsibility to guard this ox. And it's just that the Torah is having mercy upon this person, because this ox has not done this 3 times yet, so it's not something you could expect to happen. So therefore, the Torah has Rahmanis on you, and it says you only pay half a payment. But really, because the nature of an ox is that it could gore, and when it gets angry, it does gore, so therefore the person does have to be aware of this, and therefore you should have guarded this ox. That's why this payment is considered to be your responsibility. So it's a money payment. When you pay half a knas for a tam, it's a fine, because Kesavat, his opinion is, even though the nature of an ox, it has that nature that it could gore, but nevertheless, if it hasn't gored yet, so then the nature of a shiur is that it does not, and it's something not ordinary at all. And therefore, you're not expected to guard your ox from such things, and you shouldn't be paying at all for what happened. It's something that happened out of your control. It's not your responsibility to guard it from this. But nevertheless, the Torah did give the person a fine that he should pay a half a knas. That he should be extra careful and guard his ox even for something that's not necessarily expected. So the Torah fines the person to pay a half a payment. So that's the machlokes here. What's the pshat in this payment of this chatzi nezek by a tam? Is it memaina? Is it a money payment for the damage that happened that you're responsible for? Or is it an extra fine that the Torah imposes upon him, even though really it should not be your responsibility, but just as an extra, the Torah wants you to be extra careful with this ox. Siman, here the Gemara gives a siman for the different sources that it will bring as a raya to this machlokes. Hizik, ma, vehemis, klal. So Tanan, the first raya the Gemara brings from a Mishnah in Baba Kamer. So there the Mishnah says regarding the payment of a tam, when you pay half a payment. So the Mishnah says, hanizik vehamazik. So the person that damaged, that his ox damaged, and again, hanizik is the person that got damaged, and vahamazik, the person that damaged, so bitashlum, they're both participating in this payment. So what's the simple pshat of that Mishnah? Because you're only paying half of the damage, and the other half, the other person is going to end up losing, so it comes out that the damager pays, and the one that got damaged is sort of participating in the payment, he also loses half. That's the expression the Mishnah says. So now what does this mean? This is understood. The opinion that says that your payment for this chatzi nezek, that the chatzi nezek that you pay, is a money payment. So then we could understand what this means. Hainu the shayich nizik b'tashlumin. That's why we can say here that the one that got damaged is participating in this payment, right? Because he should have gotten the full payment. The fact that he's not getting the full payment, he loses part of the damage, so he's participating. But according to the opinion, this entire payment is a fine. Really, the mazik should not be paying at all. So now you're saying that what this means is that this nizik, this person that got damaged, he's getting paid for something that really he shouldn't be getting at all, because it's not the damager's responsibility. So he's receiving payment, something that he really shouldn't have been getting. Could you say that he participates in payment, that he loses something, and that's considered to be that he's participating in this payment? What happened is not at all the damager's responsibility. Be happy with what he's giving you. The half that he's giving you is beyond his responsibility. It's a fine that the Torah gave him even more than his responsibility.
Doesn't make sense.
Again?
Doesn't make sense.
Why?
how could the guy got damaged and he doesn't pay anything at all?
It's his bad luck. The way we have to look at it is that it's his bad luck. The fact that your ox damaged him, and it's something that the owner of this ox couldn't have expected it would happen. So it's not his responsibility to guard his ox. So I'm not obligated to pay you. Bad luck happened that this ox did something out of the normal. So how could you say that the nizik is participating in this damage over here because he's not getting the full payment? Adarabah, the fact that he's getting even half a payment, you should be happy. So l'chayda, this is a clear raya to the opinion that says that the payment of chatzi nezek is a money payment, and it is the responsibility of the damager, and therefore the fact that he's not getting the full payment, he's participating in this loss. Answers the Gemara, what that Mishnah was speaking about is another detail here, not the actual payment itself. It's talking about this nevela here, the carcass of this animal. What happened is, so this person's ox gored another animal and it died. How do you now evaluate the damage? You have to evaluate the difference in the value of this animal when it was alive and the animal when it's dead. Let's say the animal was alive, it was worth $10,000, and now when it's a nevela, it's only worth $1,000. So the damage is $9,000. Right, so that's what he would have to pay. Or he'd have to pay half of $9,000. So he pays $4,500. But now the thing is, this nizik, this person that has this carcass that got damaged, instead of selling this nevela immediately when it happened, he waited around. And what happens with a piece of nevela of an animal that you keep and it spoils, and then if he sells it a week later, so the price goes down, instead of it being worth $1,000, now it's going to be worth $500. Who's the one that has to take that loss? That now the price of this nevela went down because you waited around to sell it. Who takes that loss? The nizik, the one that got damaged, takes that loss. Because he should have, so as Tosfos says, the Rishonim explain, it's based on a pasuk, but the Rishonim explain the reason is that he should have sold it right away. So therefore he takes that loss. That's what this Mishnah is speaking about here when it says that the nizik participates in the loss. Again, let's see the words of the Gemara inside. This pchas nevela, when the price of the nevela went down, so who's the one that takes that loss? The nizik, that's what it was speaking about. So the Gemara asks him this, that's the pshat in this Mishnah here. Pchas nevela, this halacha, that the nizik takes this loss of the nevela that he did not sell right away, tanina. That we learned already in another place. It said it clearly already. Tashlumei nezek. The expression that it says in the Mishnah, that a mazik has to pay tashlumei nezek, what does this mean? Melamed, it teaches us shahabailim, the owner of this animal that got killed here. In other words, the one that got damaged. Metaplim benevela, it's going to be his responsibility to take care of this carcass, to sell it, and to get the money out of the value of this nevela. You may have thought that maybe it's the damager, the mazik, maybe it should be his responsibility. You're the one, your animal killed this animal. Maybe it should be your responsibility to sell the nevela and make sure that I get my money's worth of this nevela. But we say no, it's the one that got damaged. He has to be metapel b'nevela, he has to sell. And if he doesn't sell right away and the value goes down, he's the one that incurs this loss. So we have already another place where it taught us this halacha. So how could you say the Mishnah we quoted before is teaching us this? Answers the Gemara, choda betam. The Mishnah before is speaking about a tam or choda, one of them. It doesn't say which. I mean, could be the braisa here that we just quoted is speaking about a tam, and v'choda b'muad, and one of them is speaking about the case of a muad. Again, the muad is when you pay the full payment after 3 times, and a tam is when you pay half a payment when there was not yet 3 times. So in both cases, regarding a tam and a muad, he's telling you that it's the one that got damaged that has the responsibility to sell his nevela to get his money's worth from it. And it's tzricha, and it has to teach me the halach in both of these cases. Why? Yesh min tam. If it would only tell me in the case of a tam, when he pays only half, mishum dakati lo ayid, because this is a case where you were not yet warned. It did not happen 3 times yet, so we're more lenient with you. We're more lenient with the mazik, and we say that it's not his responsibility to sell this ox. Ayid, but once your animal already gored 3 times, and now you should have expected that this would happen, so it's your responsibility. So in such a case, I would say, why should I put the responsibility on the guy that got damaged? It should be fully the responsibility of the mazik, because he is the one that allowed this to happen. So he should have to sell the nevela. So therefore it has to tell me the halacha regarding the muad. On the other hand, if it would tell me the halacha regarding the case of the muad, so over here I would say that because he pays full payment, the fact that he's taking full responsibility, full payment here, so that's enough. He shouldn't have to lose anymore. We're not going to impose upon him also to take the responsibility to sell this nevela. Aval tam, a tam that only gets half of the payment, emaloi. So maybe over here the mazik should have the responsibility to take care of this nevela, to sell it, to get its value. Tzricha therefore has to say the halacha regarding the tam as well. So the Gemara's conclusion is, from this Mishnah we have no proof to the question we're asking whether the chatzi nezek is a payment of knas or a payment of mammon. Toshema, another proof. It says in the Mishnah there, ma ben tam lemuad. What's the difference between a tam and a muad? So the Mishnah there tells us the differences in halacha between them. Shatam mishalem chatzi nezek. A tam only pays half a payment, and migufay. The payment comes from the guf of the value of the actual animal itself that damaged. You take that animal and you divide it and you give the value of that animal to the person that got damaged. That's where the payment comes from. But a mu'ed, person that the ox already gored 3 times, mishalem nezek shalem. First of all, he pays full payment, and also he pays min ha'aliyah. He pays from the best of his possessions, best of his properties. He doesn't pay from the value of this animal itself. He pays from the best of his properties. Those are the 2 distinctions that the Mishnah says between the tam and the mu'ed. And for loikatani, but it does not mention there shatam, a third distinction. Why does, according to what we're saying here, we could say a third distinction? Shatam and mishalem al piyatzmai, that if you're going to say that a tam is only knas, so the rule with knas is that you never pay with your own admission. So a tam will not pay with his own admission. Umud mishalem al piyatzmai, but a mud, which is a money payment, will pay with his own admission. According to the opinion that said before that it's knas, why doesn't the Mishnah there say this third distinction? So says the Gemara, Tana v'shayir. We'll have to say that the Mishnah there is telling us the differences between a tam and a muad, and it leaves out this difference. So the Gemara asks him this, my shayir, the high shayir. What else did it leave out along with this, that it leaves this out? The rule always is that the Mishnah will not leave out one halacha, or one case. If it's leaving out, it has to leave out more than one thing. Otherwise, there's no reason why the Mishnah would leave out just one point. What else did it leave out over here? Says the Gemara, Shayer Chatzi Kaifer. It leaves out the halacha of Chatzi Kaifer. And that is, by a mu'ed, if an ox gores a human being and it kills him, so you have to pay a kaifer. You have to pay a certain money payment. Besides the fact that the ox itself has to be killed, but there's a certain money payment you have to pay. But that's only by a mu'ed. By a tam, there's no such a thing as half a payment for this kaifer when an ox gores and kills another person. So that's another distinction that the Mishnah could have said, and it leaves out. So the Gemara says, not everybody agrees to this. If you say that it's this half a kaifer, again, kaifer is this payment for when you killed somebody. If it's that left out, lav shiuruhu. It's not something which was left out. Why? Because Hamani Rabbi Yossi Aglili. That Mishnah there could be following the opinion of Rabbi Yossi Aglili. The Amar tam mishalem chatzi kaifer. Rabbi Yossi Aglili actually says that even a tam does pay a half a kaifer. Okay, this is based on the psukim. Rashi here brings the psukim where it says this halacha of paying kaifer, where it says there in the pasuk, Rashi quotes the pasuk that balashar naki. Balashar naki, whether this refers to the fact that it does not pay chatzi kaifer or refers to something else. So there's a machlokes about this. That Mishnah could be following the opinion of Rabbi Yossi Aglili that says that you do pay kaifer, even by a tam. So as Taisus here explains, the Gemara is saying this according to the other opinion. The other opinion that says that chatzi nezek is a knas, and therefore he considers this Mishnah to be a raya to his opinion. Or again, the opinion that says that chatzi nezek is mammon, and therefore this Mishnah is a raya to his opinion, and therefore there's nothing that's left over here in this Mishnah. Okay, now the Gemara comes back, or actually the Gemara first brings, the Gemara comes back to what it says in our Mishnah. Yeah. Tashema, what did it say in our Mishnah? A person comes and admits, hey, Miss Sharias Pliny, my ox went and killed this person. Or damaged an ox of another person. So then you pay with your own admission. So what is our Mishnah speaking about? Right? The Mishnah says that you do pay with your own admission. My love betam. Don't you think the Mishnah means even in a case where a person comes and admits that my ox gored another person, even in a case of a tam, when he's paying chatzi nezek, and it says that you pay with your own admission. So that must mean that the payment of chatzi nezek is mamay, not knas. Because with a knas, you don't pay with your own admission. Says the Gemara, loy b'muad. In our Mishnah, speaking about a muad, after it happened 3 times, then you pay with your own admission, because it's not a knas. Says the Gemara, aval betam, but if it was a tam, what's the halacha? Ein mishalem al piyatzmai. So then you don't pay with your own admission. The Tani Seifis. If so, what did it say right afterwards in the Mishnah? Avdei shel ploni, that if you ox gored, the person's slave, ein mishalem al pi atzmai, that you don't pay with your own admission. Why does it bring up that case? Nifloig v'nisni bidida. Instead of talking about a case where your ox gored somebody's slave, let it talk about the very case itself that the Mishnah was discussing. And let it say as follows: B'med dvaram amurim. When do you pay with your own admission? B'muad. When your ox gored already 3 times. So this is a payment which is not a fine. So you pay with your own admission. Avol tam, but if it was before 3 times, it's only a tam. Ein mishalem al pi atzmai. So then you do not pay with your own admission because it's a knas. So instead of the Mishnah going to a whole different case of an eved, let it make a distinction regarding a case that it's speaking about. The ox that's goring, the difference whether it's a tam or a muad. And says the Gemara, no, kula b'muad kamairi. This Mishnah is talking about a case of a muad. Even though you're right, it could have made this distinction regarding this case itself without going to the case of an eved, but the Mishnah would rather be talking about a muad, and it makes a distinction whether your ox, which is a muad, gored stam a regular person or gored an eved. So that's what our Mishnah was focusing on, and therefore there's no raya from the way the Mishnah says this that we can say that from here we see that a tam is going to be considered to be a mominus. Toshama, but now the Gemara brings a raya from the very last line that it said in our Mishnah. The Mishnah gives a rule. What is considered to be knas and what is considered to be a money payment and not knas. Zeh klal, here's the rule. Kol mishalem yesal ma shehizik. Anytime you pay a fine, or you're paying something which is more than what you damaged, so then this is a knas. Ein mishalem al pi atzma, you do not pay with your own admission. That's the Mishnah. So what do you see from this? Anytime a person pays less than what he damaged, then mishalem al pi atzmai, then you do pay with your own admission. What do you see from this? That if it's less than what you admitted, which is what we're speaking about here, chatzi nezek, that's considered to be a money payment, not a fine. So this is a clear raya from the Mishnah that this is not knas. Says the Gemara, no, loy teime, when you're medayik from the Mishnah, do not read the Mishnah and say that we understand from the Mishnah that pachais mima shehizik, that if you're paying less than what you damaged, that's not considered to be a knas. Ella, eime, rather read from the Mishnah as follows: kama shehizik, mishalem al pi atzmai. If you're paying exactly what you damaged, that you understand from the Mishnah, that it's considered to be a money payment and you'll pay with your own admission. That's what you understand from the Mishnah. Says the Gemara, so what does this mean? Aval pacha is mai. But if you're paying less than what you damaged, so then that's a fine, and you will not pay with your own admission. But it doesn't fit with what the Mishnah says. If so, listen, the Mishnah should have said, Zeh klal, the rule is as follows. Kol she'eina mishalim kama shehizik. Anytime you don't pay exactly what it is that you damaged, ein mishalem al pi atzmai, so you don't pay with your own admission. The Mishnah is misleading. Why does the Mishnah say that only if you're not paying more than what you damaged, then it's considered to be a knas? It makes it sound like that if you're paying less than what you damaged, then it is a money payment. The Mishnah should say very clearly, only in a case where you pay exactly what you damaged, then it's a money payment. The mashma pachais or mashma yeser. If the Mishnah would have said clearly, only when you pay exactly what you damaged, then you pay. Again, if you're not paying exactly what you damaged, then it's not considered to be a money payment. Then it's a knas. Then it would be clear that if it's less or more than what you damaged, either way, that it's considered to be a knas. To yofte. So this refutes the opinion that says that when you pay half of the payment, that it's considered to be a knas. You clearly see in the Mishnah that it's only considered to be a knas when you're paying more than what you damaged. But the Gemara says, nevertheless, what's the halacha? Palganiska knasa. When you pay the half a payment by the time, it's a knas. It's only a fine. So the Gemara asks, to yufta, you just refuted this opinion from the Mishnah and the hilchasa, and immediately afterwards you say that we follow like this opinion in the halacha. Says the Gemara, yes, because really the refutation from the Mishnah is not a full refutation. Why? Why did you refute this opinion from the Mishnah? Because the Mishnah does not clearly say that only when you pay precisely what you damaged, that then it's considered to be a money payment, but if it's not exactly what you damaged, but if it's less, the Mishnah did not say that then it would be considered to be a knas. But now the Gemara explains, I'll tell you why the Tana didn't say this. It's not clear to him. Can't tell you that this is always going to be the case. Not always when you pay less than what you damage will it be considered to be a knas. And here the Gemara will bring up that there's another case where you pay half a payment besides a tam. Till here we're talking about the case of a tam, when the ox gores before 3 times that you pay a half a payment. But there's another scenario where you pay a half a payment and everybody agrees that that's not a payment of knas, that's a payment of money for what you damaged. And what is that? Kivin the ikke chatzi nezek tzreiris. There's a case where you pay a half a payment in the case of tzreiris. What's this halacha of tzreiris? So Rashi here brings, this is the halacha of an animal that was walking and it kicked with its feet pebbles. It kicked pebbles with its feet, and then the pebbles flew and went and damaged someone. So over here, there's a halacha l'moshe misinai that we only pay half. So in this case, when you pay half, hilchese gemirila, it's a halacha l'moshe misinai de memayna, and this payment is a payment of money. It's not a payment of knas. Right? So therefore, we do have an exception. We do have a case where you're paying less than what you damaged, but yet everybody agrees that this is a money payment. The halacha l'moshe misinai says you only pay half, but it's a money payment. So therefore, the Mishnah cannot say that only when you pay kumasha hizik is it mami. Because there is an exception. There is a case where you see that half is still mami. That's why the Mishnah uses the halacha that only if you pay more is it always going to be knas. When you pay less, it's going to be knas by a tam, like the Gemara Paskins, but there is a case of when you pay half where it's not knas, where it's going to be a payment of mami, a halacha l'moshe misinai. Okay, so now after all of this, the Gemara concludes with some practical halachas of what applies in chutz la'aretz. So the basis of the next piece of the Gemara is, as Rashi brings, there's a pasuk that says, Asher yashin alakim, that you have to have a proper bezdin, with a proper smicha, in order to obligate someone to pay knas. Outside of Eretz Yisrael, in Bavel, in those times in the Gemara, and Bechlal, outside of Eretz Yisrael, where there was no proper smicha, the Bezdin would not obligate anybody to pay knas, only inside Eretz Yisrael. So therefore the Gemara here will bring some practical things regarding damage that happens in Bavel, outside Eretz Yisrael. Do you pay for this or not? Again, if it's knas, Bezdin will not obligate you to pay, because there's no Bezdin that can obligate knas. And if it's a payment of money, you will pay for it. Now, so v'hashta da omrit, now that you said, palge niske knasa, that when you pay the half payment, this is a knas, so hai kalbe the achal imri, when a dog comes and eats up a lamb, or vishunre the achal tanagaili, or a cat that comes and eats a rooster, ravrivi, a big rooster, mishunahu, this is something that the animal just did, which is very unusual. So if it's unusual, so this is considered to be a toilde of keren. When it comes to the damages that are animal damages, there's keren, there's shein, there's regel, there's different kinds of ways it can damage. What's the basic difference? There's what the animal does, which is expected, which is ordinary. An animal eats, it tramples, it walks, all those kinds of damages are expected. And therefore you pay, the first time it damages, you pay right away the full payment. And then there's keren, when an animal damages with its horn. And there is where the whole subject of tam and half a payment comes up. Why? Because this is a kind of damage which is unusual. An animal doesn't usually go and gore with its horns. So this is the basis of the payment of chatzi nezek when it's mishuna, when it does something unusual. So therefore, just like this is true regarding an ox, the same is also true regarding any animal, a dog or a cat, that damages in a way that's unusual. It's a toilde, it's similar to keren, and therefore you only pay half, and this is a knas. And therefore, v'le'makbinan bebavel, this a bezdin in Bavel will not collect this payment. Avozutri. But if you have a dog that eats up a small lamb or a small rooster, or maybe it's not referring back to the lamb, but regarding the rooster, if it's a small rooster, orchehu, so then this is usual for a cat to come and eat up a small rooster, and therefore that's going to be a toilda of shame where animal eats. Animal's looking always to eat, and therefore you're going to pay for that. Umakbina, and you do collect this even in Bavel. Now the Gemara tells us another important rule regarding knas. Again, knas is something that's not collected in Bavel. You have to have a real bezdin that has smich in Eretz Yisrael, but we eat tofas. If the one that got damaged went and grabbed something from the damager's property or something from his possessions, he grabbed the payment without Bezdin even giving it to him. Once he grabbed it, we do not take it out of his possession. Now, there's a big discussion in Rishonim regarding what the Gemara means here. First of all, some Rishonim say that this is a takanas chachamim. Even though he doesn't get that payment, but if he wants to go and grab, we'll allow him to keep. Others say that this is actually a halacha min atayra. There's a concept which the Gemara talks about in Masechta Baba Kama, ovid inish dina lenafshe. That's in certain situations when a person knows what the halacha is, he doesn't even have to go to the bezdin. He can paskin for himself and go and grab the money that's his. Taisus, however, here says, according to Rabbeinu Tam, a different shot. When it says here in the Gemara, eat tofas, it doesn't mean that he grabbed money. What it means is he grabbed that cat or that dog that did the damage, he goes and grabs that animal, and he grabs it for himself. Then we will not take it from him. V'hi yomar, if the person that got damaged comes to the Bezdin and says, Akfuli zimne le'eretz Yisrael, set for me a time, I can't come to Bezdin here to get my payment because the Bezdin here will not pass them for me, but set for me a time that I can go with the person that damaged me, will go to Eretz Yisrael. We will set a time that the person that damaged him will have to go with him to Eretz Yisrael, to go to the Bezdin there. If the person won't be ready to go with him to Eretz Yisrael, so we will put a shamta, we'll put a certain excommunication upon him to force him to pay. Another point the Gemara says, benkach or benkach, either way, whether he is or isn't ready to go to Eretz Yisrael, this person that has a dog that goes and causes such damage, so we put him into excommunication. Why? We tell him, slik hazekach, get rid of your animal that causes such damage. You have such a dog, you can't have a dog in such a neighborhood. But the Rab Nosson, based on what Rab Nosson said, Rab Nosson says, how do we know that a person should not raise a bad dog in his house? Because the pasuk, and so too a person should not have a ladder, a ladder which is a weak ladder that someone can come and climb up the ladder and fall down. You shouldn't have this in your house. The pasuk says, do not have blood spilled in your house. So that pasuk is speaking about the halacha of putting a fence around your rooftop, but it refers not only to the fence, but b'chlal, you're not allowed to have anything in your house that causes damage. So therefore, from here we see that a person should not have such a dog in his house, that if he does, then the Bezdin will force him to get rid of this dog. Hadran Allah This is the conclusion of the third Pedic of Masechta Kesubos.